Welcome to Nucleus Cloud Academy, a journey to pinnacle of success. In this video, let us understand more details about the IAM service in AWS. It's important that we understand IAM service and its advanced features because identity and access management is a fundamental and critical cybersecurity capability to ensure the right people and things have the right access to the right resources at the right time. Since it's customers' responsibility to manage security of their business in the cloud, it becomes even more important for us to understand how we can safeguard our data on cloud by leveraging the IAM service. To do that, let us navigate to IAM console by logging in with our root user credentials. We have explored the IAM dashboard in detail in our previous session and also understood what are user groups, users, roles, and policies. Now let's understand remaining features of IAM service. That is, identity providers. If your organization is already managing user identities outside of AWS, such as corporate user directory, and want to use the same instead of creating new IAM users, IAM service allows you to do so by using IAM identity providers, that is, IDP. These external users sign in through a well-known IDP such as login with Amazon, Facebook, or Google and provide those external users permissions to use AWS resources in your account. You might have experienced this already in many applications, where you are allowed to log in using your existing Gmail IDs for authentication. IAM supports IDPs that are compatible with SAML 2.0, that is Security Assertion Markup Language 2.0, or OpenID Connect, that is OIDC. That means using IAM Identity Providers feature, we are establishing a trust between the IDP services that supports SAML 2.0 standards like Active Directory Federation Service or OpenID Connect OIDC standards like Google and Salesforce. Since I will not be able to completely demonstrate the flow as this requires a metadata document that you get from the IDP, which includes the issuer's name, expiration information, and keys that can be used to validate the SAML authentication response that are received from the IDP. You can get more details on how to configure this by referring to this link. And for OpenID Connect, we need to get the thumbprint, which is a signature for the CA's certificate that was used to issue the certificate for the OIDC compatible IDP. For more details on how to configure this, you can refer to these links. I will be sharing the above links in the description section of this video as well. The steps are simple but needs details from the external IDP source, and normally in companies it is done by a dedicated team who handles all access of the employees to the AWS resources. If you happen to work in such a team, above links will help you to expand your knowledge on these configurations. Now let's move on with our next option in IAM console, that is account settings, where we see the various settings of your accounts like the password policy defined, security token service, that is STS settings, which is nothing but a AWS service that is used to create and provide trusted users with temporary security credentials that can control access to your AWS resources. These temporary security credentials work almost identically to long-term access key credentials, but the only difference is these are short-term credentials and expires after a set expiration time, which can last somewhere between few minutes to several hours depending on your use case. And also these are not stored with the principals using them, but rather are generated dynamically and provided to the principal when requested. Normally these are used in scenarios like identity federation, delegation, cross-account access, and IAM roles. You can verify the various settings for your session tokens from the STS endpoints. Now moving on to Access Analyzer. IAM Access Analyzer helps to streamline permissions management in order to adhere to the principle of least privilege, that is POLP. I had already discussed what is this principle of least privilege in my last video. To reiterate once again here, it is nothing but granting users and systems the narrowest set of privileges to complete the required task. At first, we might not know exactly what permissions one would need to accomplish a particular task, so it all starts with a broader AWS managed permissions assigned to the user. And then based on the findings in the access analyzer, we take actions to further fine-tune the access provided to the individuals. Now let's see how it works. First step is we have to create an analyzer. For that, we need to click on Create Analyzer button. Verify the region where you are creating the access analyzer. Give name to your analyzer, for example, Demo Access Analyzer. Zone of trust will be the entire account, and optionally you can add tags. Click on the Create Analyzer. Once the analyzer is created, it looks for all unique AWS actions within the account that is within your zone of trust. Maps the CloudTrail activity to IAM actions for about 50 plus services. It then generates policies that adhere to the policy language and provides an option to customize the policies further and apply them on the resources. You can review the findings by Access Analyzer and create the archive rules so that any findings that match these archival rules are automatically archived, which indicates that it is the intended permission applied on the principal. You can add some more settings to the analyzer, for which you need to be logged in with the AWS Organization Management Account credentials, which is not normally handled by most of the professionals since it requires elevated access. Next is Credential Report. This report lists all the IAM users in the AWS account and the status of their credentials. You can click on the Download Credentials report and verify the downloaded report. Open it in Excel and check details like what are the users in this account, their ARN, that is Amazon resource names, when they were created, whether the password is enabled or not, when was the password last used, when was the password last changed, MFA it is active or not, details about access keys and so on. This report helps you to evaluate the access of the users within your account. Now coming to the last two items, those are organization activity and service control policies. These are used at an organization level and permissions that are set at that level. For individual accounts, these are not required to be known. Now that we have seen all different options under IAM console, let's quickly understand how policies are generated using the policy language. IAM policies are expressed in JSON language, having the syntax below. Policy starts with a version block, ID block, and a statement block. The version block defines version of the policy language such as 2008-1017 or 2012-1017, where 2012-1017 is the current version of the policy language and 2008-1017 is the previous version of the policy language. It is always recommended to use the latest version while creating the policy in order to make use of the latest features that AWS has incorporated in the policy language. In ID block, it is nothing but a policy ID string and is an optional identifier. Next is statement block. This is the main element of the policy. Each individual statement block must be enclosed in a curly braces. For multiple statements, the array must be enclosed in a square brackets. This is where we define the exact permission using the PRAC model described below. Now what is PRAC model of policy? Let's understand with an example. In this example, the statement block starts with the square and the curly braces, which incorporates effect, principle, action, resource, and a condition. Effect is either allow or deny. Principle is an entity that is allowed or denied access, for example, users or roles. Action is a type of action that is allowed or denied. Resource is the Amazon resource the action will act on, represented as an ARN. And the condition under which the access defined is valid. You can build policies with more granular permissions and meet the best practices of IAM, that is POLP, Principle of Least Privilege. By default, IAM denies access for all the principals, and only if required policies are applied, that is when they are able to access the AWS resources. Now let me add a bit more clarity to this AWS IAM service with an example. I know the examples might seem to be a little bit weird, but our human mind is such that it retains unusual or weird things for a longer duration. That is the only intention to come up with these examples. Now we know that IAM service basically takes care of authentication and authorization of the users. Let's imagine that we have a house representing as a AWS infrastructure. If there is someone who wants to get an entry into the house, he knocks at the door and shows his identity. The IAM service checks the user's identity and either allows or denies access to that user into the house. This is what we call authentication. Once the user is authenticated with the correct credentials, he enters the house, that is the AWS infrastructure. Now for the user to do anything within the house, like access the kitchen or use the television or handle any appliance, he has to get authorized by the IAM service. If the user is a root user, that is the owner of the house, IAM will allow that user to do anything within the house. In other case, if the user is a read-only user, like some guest, then that user cannot use any appliance or access any of the gadgets within the house. He can only simply sit and watch the things happening, because IAM will not allow that user to edit any of the services within the house. Or in other case, if the user has access to only kitchen, like your maid, then that user is only given access to the kitchen by the IAM service, and rest all rooms or gadgets access is not granted to your maid. Now I hope a bit more clarity you might have got about the IAM service. With this, I conclude my today's session. Thank you for your time, and I hope I was able to deliver value for your time. This is Tasleem signing off for now.